Hi, and welcome to today's MCNPro. Happy St. Patrick's Day, I should say. Today we are going to be talking about just push record, video recording booths for visitors. And I am here, my name is Emily Lytle-Painter. I'm here as a representative from the Media Production Special Interest Group for Museum Computer Network. We would love to have you join if you're interested in media production or you're involved with doing that in your institution. Please feel free to get in touch with us through mcn.edu. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen Byans, who will be your host today. Kristen?
Hi, everybody. Hi. So I'm Kristen Byans, and I'm the Interpretive Media Specialist at the Portland Art Museum in Portland, Oregon. And the workshop that we have in store for you today is a little bit about the different types of video recording booths that have been employed in various genres of museums. This phenomenon has been happening for a little over a decade now, and the speakers that we have lined up for you, their projects represent a spectrum within that process. And I should say that these projects are becoming more and more popular as crowd and community sourced content, a more horizontal approach to interpretation, and different digital tools becoming more accessible and more open source within the museum community and the larger digital community. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. We did have some technical difficulties earlier, so we may have another person joining us here in a little bit. But our first speaker, I'll introduce speakers in the order that they're going to be speaking. So our first speaker today is going to be Taylor Hoffman, and she's from the Cleveland Museum of Art. Taylor will be speaking about an artist project called the Truth Booth. Sorry, she's actually second. Our first group of speakers is going to be Shirley Hudson and Denise Roberts, and they are from the Art Gallery of Ontario, and they will be speaking about a newly launched booth project associated with a special exhibition. Then we'll have Taylor. After that, I will be speaking about a booth project that we've been working on here at the Portland Art Museum for several years that has just recently gone through a transition phase called Object Stories. And then we'll round out the conversation with Jennifer Foley from the Cleveland Museum of Art, who will talk us through some of the prototyping processes that they are dealing with in potentially putting a new booth on the floor there at the Cleveland Museum of Art. So Shirley and Denise, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So we've been asked to talk about our video talkback booth that we did for our Jean-Michel Basquiat exhibition, which just opened February 7th and closes May 10th. This is an exhibition that we organized here at the Art Gallery of Ontario, and we had experimented with a video talkback experience in our Ai Weiwei exhibition from 2013, so that we had many learnings from that, and we'll talk about what those lessons learned were and how we built upon them within Jean-Michel Basquiat today. But we did have, this is our second go in recent years, so we had that distinct advantage of having tried this once before. Kristen had asked me to talk about actually how institutionally, what were the institutional circumstances under which this happened. I have to say that this Jean-Michel Basquiat was a particularly special moment. Here at the AGO, we had a lot of institutional excitement, and we had a lot of leadership talking about, wanting to involve the community voices, and how to bring Jean-Michel Basquiat's work into the here and now, so into Toronto 2015. So there was a lot of interest and buy-in at the very, very top of our organization from the leadership team and from our director, Matthew Teitelbaum, interested in experimenting with interpretation in terms of different ways we could bring visitor voices and Toronto voices into the show. So what we came up with was an an exit experience as you leave the Jean-Michel Basquiat exhibition, which we call internally the Culture Jam Lounge. And it features various elements. I'll walk you through them super quickly. Here is a wider shot. So you have within the Culture Jam Lounge, it's painted this fantastic color. We have prints. We also have this amazing multimedia wall, 6 screens. 3 of them are video feeds, so we interviewed people through all over Toronto about what Basquiat, why is now the time for Basquiat, that's the name of our show, Now's the Time, and why, who is Basquiat to them? People are answering, my Basquiat is possibility, my Basquiat is provocations, my Basquiat is alive. Amazing responses, and these are the same questions that we are asking our visitors, and our visitor responses, kind of the best of the best from our video talkback booth, will end up on this video wall. We also have in this multimedia wall Instagram feed, Twitter wall on one of the screens, and then also visitor art from our adjacent chalkboard and from these kiosks. So there's a lot going on here. There are music listening stations with a music playlist curated related to Basquiat's personal history. There's an Instagrammable moment, big photo blow up of Basquiat. There's this chalkboard, because I believe in an analog experience whenever you also have a technological feedback experience. So you can see there are provocations at the top there. This is hugely popular, by the way, the chalkboard. And then we have our booth, which may look rather large for a quote-unquote booth, but in fact we made it that way because it's wheelchair accessible. So we have accessibility laws in the province of Ontario here in Canada, and there's a provincial act that governs accessibility. So we fall under that act, and we're very excited. So it's more of a roomette is what we were calling it on the planning team. You can see there, you can see there's a little bit of a window, a plexi window, the provocations on the outside, and an arrow inviting people on the inside. You'll also get a hint of what it looks like on the inside. You'll see carpeting there, and once you head inside to the booth, there's just another angle, so you can see it in the context of visitors. You see the questions there. Why is now the time for Basquiat? What do Basquiat's works mean to you? Share your reactions here. And then once you head inside, you see that we've lined the entire room with this sound-absorbing foam, and that's because we learned with Ai Weiwei that sound quality is of the utmost importance. And also, our amazing designers designed this great LED strip that's embedded in the foam that also provides amazing lighting for people giving feedback, because lighting and sound quality and video quality were major issues in Ai Weiwei that we were trying to ameliorate in this iteration.
Great, and I'll talk about the experience once you enter the booth and press the tablet. So we've got really simple user interface with only 3 touch points. So you've got the share your reaction, and that's actually an animation, and the questions also pop up, and the get started button, so single touch. I took this in my office, but this would be in the booth, so in the darkened room. You've got the prompt question over top, plus the record button. And then you've got 30 seconds.
Quick, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Your screen share is not working. Is it?
No. Did you guys see any of the photos that we were? Oh no.
Oh shoot.
I was walking you through the entire booth.
I know. I was trying to text you about it, but is your screen share on?
I did press it on. Sorry about that.
We can run through it really quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Screen share. Desktop. There we go.
We did test this before the Google Hangout started, everyone.
Now we can see stuff. Yeah.
So I'll run through this Culture Jam Lounge. You can see the music listening stations, prints. There's the multimedia wall there in the background with the 3 video feeds, Twitter fall, Instagram, visitor artwork. There's our giant, beautiful chalkboard and the provocations. There's the exterior of the booth, the plexi window, the carpeting, the other shot from another angle. So we have the provocations on 2 sides. The signage is big and bold for reasons which we'll talk about in a sec. And then you enter the booth. So you could see, can everyone see right now the the cone, so the sound absorbing tiles that we have on the inside, the embedded LED lighting, and then Denise goes to the interface.
Great. So again, single touch, get started. It's an animated file that also has the questions. That's the photo from in my office, but it's actually in the darkened space. So you're reminded of the questions, and the questions stay on the screen while you've got your 30 seconds.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt again.
Yeah.
We're still stuck on a slide. I think you might be sharing a different screen.
Wow, good job.
So do you see Denise's face with provocations on top of her?
It just caught up, yes, but we were only looking at one before this.
Oh, well, I guess we're all learning how Google Hangout has
Yes,
led.
we are technologists, right? Okay, keep going.
Okay. And it's
telling us we're screen sharing too.
yeah, it's not giving us.
But now that we escaped to do something, to look, it is frozen on us as well, Google Hangout.
Yep, okay.
Oh.
There we go. So let's just try that again.
Okay.
Okay, what have you got now? The thank you screen?
Can you see that where it says thank you? We have received your response.
It's frozen on the picture of Denise.
I think we'll just have to wait for it to catch up. I think that's the only way to proceed in this little time that we have.
Sure.
Okay.
So there is a screen that you might or may not see in a second that says thank you. After you've recorded, you only have 30 seconds. It counts down, and it says thank you. We have received your response. Please visit basquiatnow.com/visitor videos to view the conversation. And then there's a done.
Yep. And then we go to basquiatnow.com, which is really great because you can go before and after the exhibition and see your visitor video online. This is a moderated feed, so every day we go and check in on this feed, and we can pull down things that were maybe non-content, or somebody's done a couple of recordings and they wanted to start again, or we can pull down things that are inappropriate, which only happens about 15 to 30% of the time, but we can talk about that after as well. We also pull down the best, or download the best videos, and we can put those, as Shirley mentioned, back into the booth.
Then eventually up on your screen, Denise will list them. We're just going to go through for the tech geeks there, the front end and back end requirements that the tech specs.
Yeah. So the front end requirements, you're going to need a soundproof booth. Ours is wheelchair accessible and it meets building code, so we had to put a small hatch in the ceiling so the sprinkler system would be able to access it because it was an enclosed space. LED string lighting, so you need to light your subject. You need, we used a Microsoft Surface tablet because it had the best quality camera and had a really fast processor to send the videos out into the universe. We also used a blue snowball mic, a USB microphone with 3 different positions. The 3-position mic worked best because you can have multiple people speaking at once. We put the tablet on a swivel mount so people could adjust the screen, and mounted that onto a shelf where we had additional instructions. You need an Ethernet connection, or you can also store this on a local computer and then pull the files from a local computer. But we wanted to have it straight to the web. We wanted that immediacy, so we chose to have Ethernet. You're going to need a power source, at least 2 outlets, if not more. And you'll also need back-end requirements. So your Ethernet connection sends your recordings to YouTube. You need a private YouTube account that you can monitor and share with your monitors. And you also need what's called an API to integrate your video recording into the web projects. We use a company called NIM to do this integration. So it goes from YouTube to NIM and then out to our website, and we pay by batch. So we've purchased over 1,000 videos right now. So, and once we reach close to that 1,000 point, we can renegotiate. Okay. And people are using the booth in a number of different ways. So they're identifying preferences, favorite works. They're talking about the social issues that are raised in the show. They're talking about formal qualities of the work, or they're telling personal stories. A lot of people talking about 1980s New York, about the power and relevance of the show, or to generally thank the AGO for putting the show on. We have a few critiques, and if the critique is, well thought out, we'll keep that. We're not
happy to.
Yeah, and some people create. We had a young boy rapping, and it was quite an amazing rap, and we kept that as well. And some people showed their drawings.
So we've only got a couple minutes left, so we're just going to speed through and hoping that you're seeing. Oh, I can't even. It's even frozen on my screen. Denise has the few of the stats of we've only been open for 5 weeks now, so 5-6 weeks, but
we've got over 700 submissions, 30 to 70 per day. If we have late night, we get some peaks, so up to 125 a day, and 70% of that content, which is fantastic, is suitable for the web. 15 to 30% are deleted.
And that's compared to, say, Ai Weiwei, where we maybe had 10% that was actually usable because of sound and lighting and positioning and all those other issues. We are, even in these early days, very happy with this strategy, interpretive strategy, because community voices, we wanted that to be at the heart of what we're doing with Basquiat, and we feel the response, given the response that we've received, that this is achieving our visitor outcomes that we laid out in our interpretive plan. And then in terms of lessons learned, we'll run through them really quickly. Institutional buy-in is key. I had an amazing project manager who basically controls the schedule and the budget, and she was committed to this booth 100%. Because it involved our carpenters, our media productions, so she was helping me make sure, and Denise making sure all of that happened, because there's so many different players institutionally involved. Signage, Denise and I are talking about this. You can never do enough signage. Basically, whatever you think in terms of signage and prompts is enough, you should then go ahead and double it. And whenever you're asking someone to participate in something, the bigger, more is more, bigger, bolder, go there if you can. Sound, light, and video quality are paramount to the success of these visitor responses. And the video quality thing, we thought we'd address the sound and the light, but we're still working on video quality. And you could talk about test.
Test. So you want to test your tablet or whatever your camera is with the microphone before you install it. You want to test it during install, and you want to test after, and you want to test each of those containers along the way. So is it making it to YouTube? What does it sound like? What does it look like? Is there a lag? Let's get some visitors in. How are they using it? So does the interface make sense to your users? And then you're going to tweak along the way. And we've been making tweaks probably in our first 3 weeks. We've been just changing tiny things or processes or more or less of something, even the lighting levels. So be committed to that testing before, during, and after. We also talked about having a timer. We use 30 seconds. It seems to be enough, but we're considering doing a little pilot to see what will happen if we give people 45. And also monitoring. If you can use whitelist monitoring, where you push through only the approved videos, that's the recommended solution, as opposed to trying to catch things that are inappropriate and then pull them down once they've gone public.
And that's our video booth in a nutshell. Please feel free to email us or contact us or call us even with any other questions you may have.
Great. And over to
Taylor.
Okay. Well, hi guys. That was great. It was really interesting to think about this compared to the project that I was working with. Can everyone hear me okay? Are you guys all right over there? Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay, great. So the Truth Booth, the project that I was working on, is operated a little bit differently than the booth that you're describing in Ontario. I was really on the front end of this project. I was hired by the Cleveland Museum of Art to work with the Truth Booth, which was a project created by a collective out of San Francisco. So there were 3 artists really involved with this project. Jim Ricks, Ryan Alexiv, and Hank Willis Thomas. So the booth came to Cleveland because we were having a photo exhibition of Hank Willis Thomas's work, and it was actually the largest that has been in the Midwest of his work. So as kind of a separate project that he was working on, he wanted this booth to kind of work in conjunction with it. Although the booth was not just shown at the art museum, it moved all over the city. And I kind of facilitated conversations about the booth. So I went to every location that the booth was set up at, and I talked to all the visitors that ended up recording in the booth. And really, you know, we had signage outside of it. I really recognized with what you guys were saying about signage and how important that can be, and I kind of ended up being that signage and really explaining to people, this is exactly what's going to happen when you walk into the booth. And I even helped them. So we had a lav mic, which basically clipped onto their collar, and did have a lot of problems with sound quality and lighting quality, because as I'll show you in a minute, we had the booth set up in all kinds of spaces. And the project ran from the first time it was set up was the end of October. It happened at one of our Cleveland Museum of Art events, Mix. It happens every first Friday, and I'll show you a picture from that. They have, I don't actually work with Mix, but there are, Jennifer does, so maybe she could speak about that later. There are hundreds of visitors who come to this event, so it was kind of an amazing opportunity to set up this booth in that context. But sound ended up being a big problem because there were so many people talking in the vicinity. So let me screen share and just show you guys what this booth looks like. Uh-oh. Okay, I guess I'm going to share myself for a second and then go over here. Does that work? Woo!
Yeah, we're seeing into the matrix right now. Can you
Yes.
select another screen?
Yes, I can try and do that. Maybe not. Just one second.
Okay.
So the pictures that I've included that you'll maybe see in a moment. We set up at churches, a few different schools. The exhibition that I was talking about, the Hank Willis Thomas exhibition, was happening both at the Cleveland Museum of Art and at the Art Museum Satellite Gallery, which is on the other side of the city. And because of the time of year, we had a really kind of amazing opportunity to set up the Truth booth in the snow. I realize you can't see a picture of it right now, so I'll just go ahead and describe it. The booth basically operates like a bouncy house, like you would have at a kid's birthday party. Because of this, you have to have a blower that travels with the booth. So it is a giant inflatable. It is 16 feet high by 25 feet wide, but has a pretty short depth. It's about 6 feet in depth, which means that the booth is very small. So it kind of gives people this thought that they're walking into a huge recording booth, but it's actually a very small space, probably 3 feet by maybe 6 feet high. And there is an interface that was developed by the collective on the inside. So I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about is that we really didn't have a lot of say on how this booth was going to operate. So because there were all these parameters that were already set for us. So basically what I was doing was making sure that the equipment that we were given operated in such a way that we would receive all of these videos and be able to edit them. So unlike y'all's project in Ontario, the videos went straight to a basically external storage drive. And to get them onto a computer and then to edit them, we just had to unplug them from the inside of this interface. I really would like to show you guys a picture of this, so let me try one more time. Kristen, do you have any hints on how this would work better?
Let me. So you're going to screen share. Are you trying to share your entire screen, or are you sharing from Chrome?
I'm not sure. Oh, I think I got it.
Okay.
You guys see it now?
I see a black screen. Oh, there you go. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this is the truth booth. I hope that I did it justice in its description. This is kind of a cropped-in image, but it is situated inside of the atrium at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And just to give you a better idea, so this is the booth set up in the snow. And this is on the west side of Cleveland. This is, I think, at the end of December of 2013. So I was saying before, the videos, and we collected more than 1,000 videos in the run of the booth. It ran, like I said, from the end of October to I'm sorry, I just want to make sure that I have the dates right on this. To the middle of March. And we didn't have 1,000 separate videos like you guys were talking about in Ontario. We had a kind of a lot of test videos. People would do 3 or 4. And what ended up being the problem with having all these videos collected, and why, if you look on the Truth Booth's website, which I've included at the end here, www.insearchofthetruth.net, you'll see that there are definitely not 1,000 videos represented from Cleveland. So the ones that you see here are a collection of some of the videos that they've pulled from this time. And then another thing that you can see at the top of this screen that should be shared, I'll make sure that you can see it, yes, are other little checks, basically, for where you can see videos that came from different parts of the world. So something that I haven't said about the Truth Booth is that it started in Ireland in 2011. And since then, so it had a run at the Galway Arts Festival in 2011. Since then, it's been to Afghanistan, South Africa. They set up at Art Basel recently. And there are plans for it to travel also around the world. And something that I learned recently, because I met with one of the people who works with the Truth Booth, is that they have just made a new booth. So after kind of figuring out all of the issues with the booth and here you see it installed at Lorraine Community College in Cleveland. So one of the problems that we had setting up the booth is that basically, like on a bouncy house, to deflate and inflate the booth, you have giant pieces of Velcro that run along the back side. And maybe I could be able, so if you see the zipper on kind of the right side of the booth underneath the second T, that is the zipper and the Velcro for where you would let the air in and out of the booth. And like I was talking about before, you have this blower. One of the interesting problems we encountered is that because this booth started in Ireland, the specs for it were made so that the outlet plugs actually fit into European outlets as opposed to American outlets. So we had to have a converter, and I think that they've had to have a converter the whole time that they've been traveling through the world. So it's just another little piece that you have to keep track of that did sometimes end up going awry. So here is the inside of the booth, and this is what I was talking about. It's a touch screen interface, and there are 3 different screens that you see. Yeah, there are 3 different screens that you see. The first one basically has the prompt, which is "the truth is ... and you ask the visitors just to respond in any way they want. So there were all kinds of different responses, and you can see some of the examples on there if you want to visit after on In Search of the Truth. Because of the different contexts of the booth, churches and schools and art galleries. The range definitely varied, but in these kind of specific spaces and academic spaces or religious spaces, we definitely had visitors who were talking about the themes of the context in which the booth was in that moment. And this is what I was talking about before, mix, you see this small picture on the left-hand side. I'm sorry, I can only get a small quality image. There were hundreds of people at this event, and it was a Halloween party. So we got some really amazing videos of people in full costumes, and definitely really having a good time being inside this booth and just speaking about whatever they wanted to talk about. I think that it did, I had a lot of moments where people were concerned about what the purpose of this was. I think the open-endedness of the project sometimes frustrated people, and there was like maybe a little bit of distrust that I had to talk people through. So my kind of role as facilitator, I don't know, it's really interesting, all these different conversations that I'd have with people, some really profound moments. So this shot that you see is in the facilities of a megachurch in outside of Cleveland in the suburbs. And this was a 2-day run that we had. It was a really incredible experience because the booth was set up while a sermon was happening. And so definitely, like I was saying before, you know, as people walked out and stood in line, they had all these things on their mind that had happened you know, in the 30 minutes prior to this moment. And the responses that came out of that, a lot of which are included online right now, spoke about their understandings about God and the world, and it was really great. So here's another shot from the snowy art gallery, and this was one of our smaller attended days because of the snow, but the videos that came out of this were really incredible because of the nature of the vinyl. It's not completely opaque. You had light that came in from the outside that came into the booth. So there was some lighting. If you see on the picture that I'm showing now, right, the camera is inside of that glowing bit of light. So basically the light served to light the front of the people's faces who were sitting in the chair. But as I've heard from the guys who edited these videos, there were still a lot of problems with lightings, especially as you'll see on the left-hand side of the image, there is a curtain that falls down. One of the issues that we had was that the curtain didn't stretch completely from one side of the opening to the other side of the opening. So we kind of had to stretch the curtain over these sides, but still there'd be light pollution coming in from one side. So there was a lot of labor that went into editing these videos, and I think because of that, it means that you lose some great responses because there's just not enough time to edit all these videos. So I think it's really the route of taking the videos and having them directly uploaded online and using an external service like you guys were talking about in Ontario, I think is something that would really add to this experience, just so people can see their responses. And that's a question that I got a lot. When can I see my responses? Where is this going to go? So just to have that immediacy, I feel like is really important. Especially if you want to keep people interested and keep the conversation relevant. I think that's all I have to say. I'll end on this picture. I set up a lot inside of, like you saw before, the soccer field. This was a basketball court. I set up in the middle of a roller skating rink. It was a really exciting project, and one that definitely informed the exhibition that was happening at the CMA. It was great to have it set inside the museum and have this interactive component of an exhibition, and have visitors speaking to that, although not always directly, like I was saying before. So thank you, and Kristen, is it over to you now?
It's my turn. Hi everybody.
Okay.
So All right, so I'm going to be talking about object stories. Now, I've been working at the Portland Art Museum for about a year and a half, and Object Stories is a very large project that the museum launched, officially launched in March of 2011. The key members who were the ones that shaped this project were Tina Olson, and she's now at the Clark. She was the Director of Education here at the Portland Art Museum at the time. Stephanie Parrish, who is the Associate Director of Education and Public Programs here at the museum, and Amy Gray. She's the Manager of Community and Tour Programs here at the museum. So I have jumped in on the tail end of this process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the kind of origin stories of object stories, and then I'm going to take you through a couple of different issues that we've had, and then how that has influenced our direction for the future. So object stories, let me get my screen, my slide share working here. Okay, so object stories has several different components. Object stories is the final product of which is a combination of still imagery and audio, which folks can browse and listen to. So what you're seeing right now is part of our gallery, our Object Stories gallery. So we have an in-gallery component for the project. The image that you're seeing now, you see the in-gallery listening and browsing kiosk station. You also see 3 of the 6 cases that we have that we can show objects in. You can also see our introductory panel, and you can see there are next to the 3 cases there are our typical ways in which we introduce the story. So you have a picture of the individual, the storyteller, and then a 6-word story. This exhibition was the first one that I worked on when I joined the museum. It was called Revival Remix, and it was focusing on Portland's period music scene. Portland's blessed with many niche communities, and a Baroque music scene is one of those. So you see the kiosk, the listening stations, you see our typical gallery components. The next slide will show you our booth. So we had an in-gallery booth, and I'll show you the inside here in a second. So the in-gallery booth was something that was very controversial and took a lot of sweat and tears and trial and error to get a permanent space within the museum for this booth. We also had an app, and this is the CMS. We have a customized CMS. We had an application, and we also had a website. So the CMS, you can see that it was in the gallery. It was a touchscreen application where you would see various images of stories being displayed. They would flip over. You could touch on them, and then the story would play. So Object Stories grew out of work from the Smart History project the museum was performing in 2009. That was a CREST-funded project. That project was about professionals engaged in conversation, slow looking, and listening, and that gave birth to an interest in personal storytelling, so personal relationships with objects, and this was personal objects in the beginning. So personal relationships with objects and the deep meanings that people associate with things. So our tagline is "Objects have stories. Tell us yours." I should mention that this project from the beginning was bilingual in English and Spanish. The image that you're seeing on the screen now is one of the interior of the booth. The Object Stories functioned in 2 ways. You're seeing one way now. So you could go online, you could make an appointment to come to the booth. Once you arrived at the museum at your designated time, a volunteer would take you to the booth, would have you sign a waiver, get you situated. You would sit down, and you would follow a series of prompts on the screen. The screen was a touch screen, and you can see above the touch screen there's a small hole. That's where the camera is. So you would.
Kristen, sorry to interrupt, but we can't actually. At least for us, it's stuck on screen 1. So
awesome!
We can only see the first one. Oh, there! It just moved to screen 2 or 3.
Okay. Sorry, guys. All right, hang on. Okay. So screen 1, gallery. Screen 2, booth and gallery.
You have to drive this
Screen,
way.
can you see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, interface, gallery interface, booth. You got that? Booth, solid. Okay, so you go through a series of prompts. You're in the booth, and you can see that that's a touch screen in the booth, and then above that's a camera recording all the data. So what ends up happening is that from this point, after you've completed your project, all that information gets aggregated in the CMS. On the back end, someone like myself would go in and extract that data and edit the audio. So we'd edit the audio down to 90-second clips and then toss that back up onto the CMS, which would then be available via the website and also the in-gallery kiosks. Now, we started an app with this project right after the launch in March. I don't have pictures of the app, so I'll just go back to my face here. Okay, there we go. This is not the application. This is me. The app was launched right after the March 2011 in-gallery booth show-off date. The app was intended for us to create experiences for visitors who didn't have access to or couldn't come to the museum. We got a grant from IMLS in 2011 to expand our use of the application to a project called Object Stories in the Middle, where we went out to middle schools and provided personal storytelling experiences where students would go through a process with museum docents and various different organizations in town that dealt with creative writing, and then they would come to the museum, have a visit, go through the Object Stories gallery, and then we would collect their stories via the app. So the app works the same way as the booth. Editing works the same exact way as well. In either way, in either app or booth form, visitors would go through a series of prompts. The series of prompts were, after visitor testing, we came to the conclusion that the series of prompts needed to be aggregated into a narrative format, so there was a strict beginning and middle and an end. So in the beginning, you're introducing the object to everybody. So you're telling what the object is. So for instance, the first time I set eyes on this object was blank. Then the middle section was about a specific event or transitory moment that you've had with this object, and then so that would be the climax of your story. And then we would go back down to the ending, and that's where are you now with this object in your life? So what's the personal meaning at this particular segment? So I mentioned earlier that there are two types. I very quickly mentioned this. There are two types of stories that we were collecting. One were these personal object stories, so you could come in and you'd make an appointment, and then let's just say I have a really interesting story to tell about my phone. I have some kind of crazy circumstance that happened and it means something very special to me, so I could come in, sit down, go through the prompts, give you a story about my phone. Now, that's something that could be very meaningful for me as a person, but may not necessarily have made a great story for the end user to experience. So we're still grappling with some of those issues today. It's 2015, so the project has had a long life cycle. The other type of story that originated was a museum story. So in the gallery itself, the objects on display were collection objects originally, and those were coupled with the fact that you could listen to personal object stories. So there was the connection was kind of tangential around objects and meaning making, but we've always had this kind of hard time making the actual leap from a collection object to personal object. Now, the application did allow us outside of the schools to help create that boundary a little bit, make that boundary a little bit more narrow between collection objects or museum stories and personal stories. We provided an iPad with the app, so it's an iOS application, to a teaching artist, and she took the app up to Yupik, to a Yupik community in Bethel, Alaska, and she recorded several stories with the application, and brought images from our collection that are part of the UPIC collection up there. So they were telling personal stories and also telling stories around our collection objects. So those two things were presented for the first time together. And they were also outside of the Object Stories gallery. We had the ability to put iPads in the galleries associated with those other works of art. Now all of that sounds really awesome, but we did have a lot of problems. Some of the problems, actually a lot of the problems, stem around the fact that we used a customized CMS. Red flag number one, don't do that. Outside of the fact that it's super expensive, it's hard to always kind of trust who you're working with. So the problems that we had were with the customized CMS is that many people had their hands on the project. So there's like a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And some of these cooks weren't very good at documenting their work. So it's like following a recipe that may have been written in someone's like scribbled hand, or like, you know, some of the ink's been smeared, or there's like food all over the pages. So it's very hard to follow what the person did before you. So the code continuously was breaking. That also made the content management system very slow. So there were patches upon patches upon patches. Also, only one person, one editor at a time, could either use the application and or use the CMS from a desktop. So that made workflow really slow as well. We don't have very much staff here at the Portland Art Museum. Right now it's just myself and a fellow. The fellow's a temporary situation. So I would be the one who would create all of the Object Stories content. I would, anyway, so Object Stories content. It was also really expensive. It's several $100,000 the project cost us to create the booth, all the soundproof insulation, the lighting, the bench seating. And unlike the Art Gallery of Ontario, our booth, even though we had soundproof foam in it, was not truly soundproof. So that's a problem with an in-gallery installation that's permanent. We also, so I said we had little staff. The search functions for our CMS were very poor. The finesse, the searching finesse, you could not get to a very finite type of identification or tag. So you would get a variety of things coming up, and so you may not be able to necessarily find your story right away. And there was always this mixture of museum stories and personal stories crossed over, and it was frustrating for some users who just wanted to find a personal story. Also, I mentioned the documentation, the lack of documentation. What else was I going to say? Oh, the company that we dealt with went out of business when I was hired, so that was a huge problem. And so that basically left me to try to hire someone outside of the museum, because we don't have an IT department. That's another big thing. We don't have an IT department here. So I had to hire an outside consultant to create basically the brain tree of the CMS, so I could transfer that data to someone else. So all of those problems, oh, and we had limited access to the website because the individual company held all the keys to the kingdom, and it was very hard for us to change anything on our website as well. So those are all of our problems. Now what we did with that was we decided that we love the kernel, the idea of object stories, of this personal storytelling conversation, having a unilateral voice in the museum, not the voice of God or the Almighty, the curator voice like from on high. We are looking now at a more curated experience. It's easier for us to manage staff-wise and time-wise. Object Stories Gallery rotates every 3 to 4 months. So what I've been doing is seeking out individuals within the community. It's still community-centered. It's still community voice. But I'm seeking out individuals who have a specific nuance or affiliation with some kind of programming or special exhibition that we're doing here at the museum. So it's a whole interpretive package. So we'll go from personal object stories around personal objects affiliated with something that the museum is doing to collection-centered object stories. So we just celebrated a 5-year anniversary of our Artist Talk series, and so I did an object stories about objects that the artists made from their artist talks. They were influenced by objects in our collection. So we're moving away from the booth. The booth actually no longer exists. The booth, we got rid of the booth in February. We're moving to a BYOD platform, so it's a completely mobile platform. We're testing out Story, STQRY, right now. We haven't officially launched Story, but it's a drag-and-drop content management system. It's within our price range, and it's a lot easier time management-wise as well. So I guess I would just say that make sure, so moving forward for us in object stories, we're looking for a CMS that's canned. So we're looking for something that's in WordPress, something that's drop and drag. We don't heavily edit our audio. We do have 90-second clips, but we're still sticking to the still image and audio together. I should mention that the reason why we did that after visitor testing is that people were more inclined to tell stories or to tell a cohesive experience without just this free-form, kind of word vomit. I'm in a booth. I'm telling you all of these things with all of this experience that I have, and those weren't necessarily compelling stories. And so a more guided experience ended up in user testing being the way to go. And a more of a photo booth experience made people a little bit more comfortable instead of having a video camera pointed at them. They have the ability in the booth that we had to redo their story, so they could say, I don't like that, I'm gonna back up. Yeah, so I think I should probably stop there. I could keep going on and on and on about object stories, but so the next person that we have on deck is Jennifer Foley, and so she's going to take us through a prototyping process. So take it away, Jen.
Hi. I'm not sure that I'm going to take you through the prototyping process because we're actually just starting it right now. One of the where we are at this point is that we have a project that we're about to begin, it is, we're not sure if it's going to be a booth or if it's just going to be a recording space, but it's something that we have been talking about at the museum for the last few years. And it was a project that was kind of out there as a project, but it didn't really have a great kind of home to latch on to. And what the place that we've gotten to now is that our museum is going to be celebrating its centennial in 2016. And so as part of the discussions that we were having about things around the centennial, this idea that had been kind of kicking around for a while of capturing visitor voices and visitor responses to the collection or to the museum, that we have a very, very high repeat visitorship. Something between 75 and 80% of the people that are here on any given day have been here before. And many of them come 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year. So we have also a lot of people who are kind of high intensity users of the museum and come here and really have a sense of attachment to the museum, to the history of the museum, to its place in Cleveland. And I think one of the things that we hear from visitors kind of constantly is that sense of the CMA as being this hometown museum, of this hometown institution that people are very, very proud of. And one of the things about this institution is that we have studio classes that are offered for all the way down to our very youngest visitors. And one of the things that you would hear over and over again in talking to people is they would say, I started coming to the CMA when I was this many years old, and usually a single digit, and people will say things like, that was the first time I was allowed to take the bus by myself, so that I could go to my art classes. So people have these kind of long, very personal, and like very kind of emotional histories with the museum. And we felt like the centennial year is this great moment to capture those stories beyond somebody stopping me in the atrium and saying, do you know I've been coming here for 60 years? So it was this great moment to kind of bring those things together. And so I was able, I'm very happy to say that I was able to get a little bit of funding to try a prototype of having a recording space. And that's kind of where we are, is that we've been talking through This is a project that right now is kind of, there are members of the team like myself that are in interpretation, and then there's also members of the team that are in design and in the IT department, IMTS, and then all of us are sort of, and also from education, the head of education interpretation. So everyone is kind of in that discussion about what is going to happen at the prototyping stage. And I think the idea is that we'll be, we're hoping to launch the prototype sometime over by the summer, and that it's going to be a very iterative process to figure out what are the prompts that really help people to kind of share those stories. What kind of interface is really going to work for people as a user experience, and what are the sorts of equipment that are really going to work best for our space. So I think as part of that process, my team and I went out to Portland and we visited Kristen and everyone in the education department there and took a look at object stories. And I actually am hoping to get up to the AGO next month so I can see what they're doing, and trying to really talk with people who've gone through the experience before and use that as part of our prototyping experience. And I think we're almost out of time, so I want to make sure that I wrap up before we completely end. But yeah, since we're at the very beginning stages, I don't have any slides to share, but I can say it's been a very interesting experience having the kind of discussions around how that's going to be structured and how that will really help to bring out those visitor voices.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. It was a pleasure being able to hear all of the different perspectives on video recording booths. I hope everyone who joined us today got something out of it. I tried to bring together a whole bunch of group of people who were dealing with different aspects of booths and how booths can change over time. If you have any questions, we've got a couple of minutes left. You can just put them in the Q&A box. If there are no questions, I can turn it back over to Emily. Maybe.
I think you want to wait a second. Do any of you have any questions for each other?
I was actually, yeah, I do. I was really interested to know if the responses changed based on, for the Truth booth, based on where it was located.
Yes, definitely. Like I was talking about at the churches, we definitely had responses that were geared toward like being in a religious institution. I set up at a middle school, or actually not a middle school, it was, I'm sorry, that's my dog in the background, freshmen and sophomores in high school. And, they talked a lot about the truth about their school, which was great. They had the principal sitting outside of he was a big part of getting the booth there. And so just, yeah, definitely people were talking about the space that they were in. When it was set up at the museum, I had a lot of people kind of, what Jennifer was talking about their experience at the CMA. The truth is, I love this museum, stuff like that. Does that answer your question? Okay.
We had one question come in from the Q&A. Is a video booth a much better option than audio-only recording?
I think I've been studying audio tours versus video tours, audio experiences in exhibitions versus video experiences. I think in 2015, the prevalence, I'd be interested to hear what the other presenters think, but the prevalence of video and the YouTube generation, I don't know what kind of pickup we'd get on a audio-only talkback booth. We know that audio isn't as popular as an in-gallery strategy as a video strategies are. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
I'd have to agree with you on that one. Even though Object Stories is audio combined with still images, it's still in a video format. So I mean, it's a digital slideshow basically. We did get a couple of other questions pop up. So very quickly, can we just go around go around the hangout and say a little bit about the budgeting for the projects? Object Stories is completely funded by different grants, and there's a small portion of my budget that's set aside for maintaining it as well.
I actually managed to get some funding in my the budget for my department to do the prototype, and I don't know where I'm going to get funding for things after the prototype. We'll find out.
In Canada, we don't have the same kind of grant system that America has. So the funding for the Basquiat booth came out of the exhibition, the special exhibitions budget. Yeah, directly.
And I was not a part of the budgeting conversations for the Truth Booth, but I'm sure I could get more information about that. And you have given everyone our contact information, Kristen, or do we need to share that separately? If anyone really wants to know, I'd be happy to let them know.
Emily, it's 12:02. Should we go ahead and close it down?
Yeah, so we have one question asking presenters to share their slides, which is not a surprising question considering some of the difficulties we have had. So I think probably what might make the most sense is sharing on Twitter, sharing links. So we will share those with MCN, and hopefully they can retweet them, or you can reach out to myself or Kristen. Kristen is K. Baines, right?
Yeah.
And so you can reach out to either one of us and we can get you the links for the slides. And we have one more question. We can't leave just one. Shirley and Denise, what software did you use to record your videos?
So we used the in-camera on the Microsoft Surface, and then we pushed it out through a program called Kiosk Pro. We've been using Kiosk Pro for a long time, and then we pushed it out to YouTube and then through an API that was hosted by NIM, N-I-M-B-B. We're looking for another software that's in the tablet other than Kiosk Pro, so if you have any tips for us, please let us know.
Can I just say real quick, on the Truth Booth website, there are opportunities still to get in touch with these artists because this booth is still around, definitely. And that wouldn't happen through the CMA, that would happen through the Cause Collective. And I'll make sure to get that website out to you guys, and you can be in conversation with artists.
Great. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you to all of our speakers. And we'll see you next time for another MCN Pro. Adios.